Greetings, adventurers. This is Kazu of the Wormforge, and today we're going to be showcasing not one, not two, but three different builds for you guys to celebrate the second year anniversary for Baldur's Gate 3, which as of August 3rd, 2025, it has been 2 full years since this game had come out. We've gotten a ton of different patches, and Larian Studios has really proven their commitment and passion towards Baldur's Gate 3 by just adding in such an amazing depth of different content, as well as polishing the game to the point where I can confidently say that this is one of my favorite CRPGs of all time. And so in today's video, we're going to be showcasing, again, 3 different builds. The first one is going to be the Gunslinger, which is a combination of the Thief Rogue and the Swords Bard. We are going to be using firearms from the Faerun Firearms mod for that, but you can also use hand crossbows, and it's going to be still absolutely fantastic. Next up is going to be our Warrior Druid build, which is going to be a mixture of Circle of the Moon Druid with a 1-level dip in Draconic Sorcerer, so that we can get the sweet Constitution saving throw proficiency. We are going to be casting powerful concentration spells, then wild shaping into powerful melee forms, and we're going to be making use of Tavern Brawler, as well as another feat which I think might surprise you, so that we can lock down our enemies while still having that impact on the battlefield from the concentration spells. And then last but not least, we have our Drunken Barbarian build. This is going to be using the Punch Drunk Bastard alongside the Tiger Wildheart Barbarian and Drunken Monk, and it's going to be a lot of chaos, a lot of AoE, just a ton of fun. I think all 3 of these builds are pretty interesting and are very relevant for honor mode as of the final patch, so you're gonna have a fantastic time using any one of these builds. Please like, comment, really helps out the video, and I guarantee you at least one of these 3 builds you either have not heard of, seen of, or tried before. And if that is the case, you gotta subscribe. Do check me out for more Baldur's Gate 3 content, and also we're gonna be having more builds in the future. So let's get straight into the video. We're gonna go very briefly over level progression for each one of these, and I am gonna have an EIP.gg build planner so that you can follow along and very quickly and easily reference the builds that are going to be showcased in today's video. But we do want to talk about itemization. We want to touch all of the major points of these builds that bring about some interesting and creative ideas that I think you guys are going to enjoy. So we got a lot to cover today. Let's get straight into the video. Right, so first up we have is our Gunslinger build, which, as I said earlier, is going to be a mixture of Rogue, Bard, Fighter, as well as Warlock. Sounds a little bit jank, I know, but trust me, all of these synergize very well together to make a dual-wielding ranged damage dealer character. Now we are using some firearms, which are going to be from the Faerun Firearms mod. That's going to give us access to things like the revolver as well as the hand cannon, and these are going to deal a little bit more damage, just 1 extra damage dice compared to your regular options for the crossbows. Kind of one of the main reasons why I don't usually play crossbow builds is because in Act 3 there's not any new hand crossbows to get for your character to progress them and to make them more fun and more badass. So getting the firearm mod is going to give us a lot more options in terms of what we want to use for our hand crossbows, so that's pretty fun. Check out that mod, link will be in the description below if you want that. And also for the appearance of our character, we are sporting the Gunslinger hat and boots from the Gunslinger mod that's on the Nexus from Skirby. Well, actually you can get it as on just the Larian modding. And then we also have the Rogue Suit VA, which is from Mix Armor that you can get on Nexus mod. So that's my modded loadout for the appearance here for our Gunslinger character, so that she looks like a cowgirl. Looks super badass, I know. But yeah, we're going to be rocking a ranged damage dealer build. Let's go over the level progression as well as everything else. Alright, so now let's go over the level progression. We're going to be using EIP.gg for the build planner. Link in the description below so that you can just check it out and follow along with me, or just have quick reference to what the actual build is going to be. Basically, we're going to be a wood elf. We're going to take the urchin background, and our ability spread is going to look like this. We want to get our dex to 17. That way we can get the hag's hair and bump that up to an 18. All right, so let's go over our level progression. At level 1, we are going to be starting off as a rogue, which is going to give us proficiency in intelligence and dexterity saving throws. We're going to have persuasion, acrobatics, deception, and intimidation as our skill proficiencies, and we're going to take expertise in sleight of hand and persuasion. Expertise just means that you can double your proficiency bonus on a check that you have expertise on. So for sleight of hand, we get to add 4 instead of a +2 at level 1, along with our dexterity modifier. We're going to be really good at picking pockets and talking people down. We also get sneak attack, which is very nice, consistent damage, and even late game, even though it's not as good damage, if we use the Crater Flesh gloves, which I do recommend using, it's going to be a good amount of damage. Now, second level, we're going to continue with Rogue for cunning action. Third level, we're going to be taking the Thief subclass for fast hands, which gives us a second bonus action, and that's super huge because we're going to be dual wielding. Level 4, we are taking Crossbow Expert. This is going to make it so that when we make attacks in melee range, where normally we'd be threatened if we're using a ranged weapon, we do not have disadvantage anymore. This is very, very strong. It's going to be what makes the Crossbow Expert or the dual wielding build so effective, because even if people get in our face, we can just blast them, no problem at all. And in fact, we want to get up close and personal to some enemies if we get the Ballast Armor, which I'm going to talk about later. Now, level 5 is when we can finally multi-class and we can go into Bard. This is going to net us another skill proficiency, some cantrips, as well as spells, and I recommend Longstrider for extra movement speed, Heroism, which is going to give you immunity to fear, Healing Word to get your allies up, and Fairy Fire as a very easy way to get advantage onto your enemies for your ranged attacks. Level 6, we will continue with Bard. We're going to get Jack of all trades. We're going to get Song of Rest. We also get Featherfall as our spell. That's what I recommend. At level 7, that's going to be when we get our subclass. We're going to be taking these College of Swords, which is going to give us access to a fighting style, first of all, but also, and more importantly, access to the flourishes, which can be used in melee and in ranged. So Defensive Flourish is going to give us a bump to our AC by +4. Very nice. We have Slashing Flourish, which allows us to attack 2 enemies at once in a single attack, and also you can attack the same enemy twice, so that's super strong. And then we have Mobile Flourish, which can allow us to shoot an enemy and push them back, and then we could also teleport to them afterwards. This is really, really clutch, super good for displacing enemies, knocking them off cliffs, sending them into spell effects where they're going to take damage. I actually think Mobile Flourish is heavily underrated and very valuable. Now, we also get some skill expertise and some spells, so make sure to take that. Level 8, we're going to get access to another feat, and of course, we're going to be taking Sharpshooter for more damage. Level 9, we are going to be getting Font of Inspiration, so we get back our Bardics after a short rest. This is really big because up until then, you're going to have to be a little bit sparing with when you use your flourishes, but once you get this, you're going to get them back on short rest, your Bardic Inspiration. So you can use them as much as you want, and the dice for them is going to be increased, so you get a little bit more value out of that. Level 10, we are going to get extra attack because we have our 6th level in Bard. Super, super big. We get to make 2 attacks with our crossbows and then 2 offhand attacks with our 2 bonus actions. And if we use Slashing Flourish, that could be another 2 attacks as well for a total of 6 without haste, without any sort of extra things bolstering our action economy. Absolutely crazy how much damage we can do as a ranged character. So really powerful here. This is basically where the build peaks, but the next 2 levels are still going to boost us quite a bit. So level 11, we are able to take the Fighter Dip, and that's going to give us another fighting style, which we're going to take Archery. So it seems a little bit inane to spend an entire level on just the archery fighting style, but having that +2 to ranged weapon attacks is going to make you that much more consistent while you're using Sharpshooter for that +10 bonus to damage from the power attack. So it is very, very strong. And of course, if you're not familiar with Sharpshooter, it gives you the all-in ability where you can take a -5 penalty to an attack row and deal an additional 10 damage. Absolutely huge. If you're making 6 attacks, +10 damage on each attack is 60 extra damage at the end of the day. So it does make a very big difference, and it's very much worth getting the dip for archery. And then last but not least, we are taking a dip in Hexblade Warlock, which has been added as of patch 8. This is going to give us access to Hexblade's Curse. And Hexblade's Curse is a bonus action where you curse a target, you reduce the roll you need to crit by 1 on them. If they die, you get some healing, and you also deal bonus damage equal to your PB, which at this level is +4 damage per hit. So that's going to be a substantial boost on top of the fact that we're going to be critting more often. It seems a little bit crazy to, again, take a 1 level dip for this ability. Even though we can't use blind text weapon on our ranged weapons, we have to use this basically on a boss, but it is going to substantially increase our damage. And better yet, we also get access to the shield spell from our dip into Hexblade Warlock. And if we just want flat out damage, if we don't want to use our spell slots for control options like Hold Person or Hypnotic Pattern, we can use this on Hex and get even more damage output to eviscerate our foes. So this is a very heavily damage focused build, and that's going to really key in when we talk about our itemization. All right, so let's talk gear progression. Now, if you're using hand crossbows for this, if you don't want to go with the favoring firearms, the good thing about the hand crossbows is that you can get both near misser as well as the Hellfire hand crossbow in Act 2. And if you rush it, you can get it very early into Act 2 as well. These are super good, very consistent damage output. You know, we have a +2 bonus from the Hellfire hand crossbow, +1 bonus from the near misser, but it does force damage instead of piercing, which is almost never resisted or has immunity. So both of these are really great weapons to run, and they do give you extra spells too. In our case, we're going to be using the Living Conduit, which is a hand cannon, along with the Festering Revolver, which is going to be a revolver from the Faerun Firearms mod. So these are just nice little additions that I have for my character to make them fit the vibe of a gunslinger, of a Western cowboy. I like that a lot. But again, you can use the hand crossbows. They're still going to be great. Now, for our melee weapons, we're running Knife of the Intermounted King to increase our crit chance. This does stack with our Hexblade's Curse, which is freaking awesome. And then we also have Dollar Amaris to make it so that whenever we crit, we deal an additional flat 7 damage. That's huge. Both of these buffs apply to our ranged weapon attacks. We have the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, which I highly recommend running on this character because we took a dip at Swords Bard. Band of the Mystic Scoundrel is just so freaking powerful. Whenever we make an attack, we can then use a bonus action. And we have 2 bonus actions, by the way, to cast Hold Person or to cast Hypnotic Pattern. Or if you have any illusion spells you want to cast, you can do that as well. Super high value to be able to make full-on weapon attacks and then also cast leveled spells on the same turn, multiple leveled spells if you really want to. We're going to be taking the Strange Conduit Ring for extra damage while we're concentrating on a spell, and we do have some great options such as Fairy Fire or Hold Person to concentrate on at all times. We're also going to be taking the Broodmother's Revenge, so that whenever we get healing, which we can buff in advance by just drinking a healing potion, we deal an additional 1d6 poison damage. You can swap this out with whatever you want. If you want an Amulet of Greater Health or the Amulet of Feywild Sparks, that's going to give you advantage on all mental saves. Like, those are going to be great options to have. But if you want just flat damage, Broodmother's Revenge is actually pretty decent. Then we have Disintegrating Nightwalkers, the Crater Flesh Gloves, which to get this item as well as the Ballast Armor, you are going to have to complete the sacrifice at the Temple of Baal in front of ASRock. It is a little bit of an evil thing to do. So if your party is not interested in doing that and getting that special vendor to get Ballast Armor and the Crater Flesh Gloves, then you don't have to run these. The alternative is going to be the Armor of Agility, and then for the alternative for the Crater Flesh Gloves, you know, really any sort of gauntlets are going to work that are going to give you extra damage. For example, the Helldust Gloves is going to be a great one because this also increases our spell attack rolls and our spell save DC. So we do have some pretty good options if we don't want to run these, but if we do run these, whenever we crit with the Crater Flesh Gloves, we deal an additional 1d6 force damage, and for whatever reason, this counts as a damage rider source in honor mode difficulty. So you will get another proc of sneak attack, you will get additional procs of all of your items and all of your abilities if you wear the Crater Flesh Gloves and you crit. It's really, really, really broken. I'll probably show you guys some examples of how much damage you can do wielding the Crater Flesh Gloves because they're fucking crazy. And then the Ballast Armor is going to make enemies vulnerable to piercing damage if they are within 3 meters of us. So that's also just insane considering that all of our damage is going to be piercing damage. Then, of course, we have the Cloak of Displacement and the Mask of Soul Perception. This is going to make us a little bit tankier. This is going to make us a little bit more accurate and have higher initiative, both of which are very valuable for our character. So, pretty straightforward loadout and playstyle for this build. We're just going to be running around, blasting people, making our mark onto the key boss or main target, and then we simply just unload our shots. If you use the favoring firearms, you do have to make sure to manage your ammunition and have your guns loaded at all times. But yeah, it's a really simple build and yet very effective, super deadly, insane damage output against enemies, especially if you get the ballast armor and the crater flesh gloves. I mean, you can legitimately one-shot some bosses, even on honor mode difficulty. Your damage output is going to just be in freaking insane, and this build is just tons of fun because you have lots and lots and lots of options. You're not just making attacks every single turn. Sometimes you have the option to do a mobile flourish attack with your ranged weapon and then knock somebody off of a cliff. Sometimes you might want to go for the defensive flourish to boost your AC, and then you can cast shield and boost your AC again by 4 and then 5 for +9 to AC in one turn. I mean, that's crazy. You can become the AC tank by just being able to use these options. So having control spells, having these utility options as well is going to make this build very diverse, a lot of fun. Check it out. Let's go over the next one. All right, next up we have is our Warrior Druid, and this is going to be primarily Circle of the Moon Druid, which I've ranted extensively about on my tier list video, but we are taking a first level dip into Sorcerer, and the reason why we're doing that is to gain proficiency in Constitution saving throws, because this build is very much focused on maintaining concentration on some high value spells while we are wild shape, so that we can be really strong in battle as a melee character, but then also very effective controlling the battlefield, dealing AoE damage as a caster. And so let's go over the level progression for this build. No matter these two things, you can pick whatever you want. We're going to have the ability stat spread as shown here. Constitution, do get that to a 17 because we're going to take Tavern Brawler at level 4, and then we're going to bump Arcana by 1 to 18, and then make sure your Wisdom is a 16. Now, for our first level, as I said, we're going with the Sorcerer. If you really don't want to play Sorcerer as your first level, you can just play Druid and then respec later, but I actually like the theme of starting off as a Sorcerer because maybe our character had just suddenly spawned their magic powers from nowhere. They had realized that their ancestors were a very powerful dragon, but then changed their form into other things, into the very elements of nature itself later on when we get our elemental forms. So first level of Draconic Sorcerer is going to give us a few pretty cool things. We get 4 cantrips, of which we're going to take Blade Ward, Shocking Grasp, Minor Illusion, and Mage Hand, because we are not going to be Charisma. We're actually going to dump Charisma, so our damage cantrips are going to be pretty bad, but that's why for our spells, we're taking Shield and Magic Missile, so Charisma does not matter for these abilities. I will say for your proficiencies, unfortunately, Persuasion is not going to be that useful on this character. You can take whatever you want. Definitely Arcana is going to be the more useful one. And then for our Ancestry, we're going to take Draconic Ancestry White, which is going to give us access to the Armor of Agathis spell. This is very good, especially because we're going to be a melee character, and this is going to give us extra THP and extra damage if enemies hit us in melee while we still have that THP. Now, we also get Draconic Resilience, which is going to make it so that our AC is going to be a base 13 while we're not wearing armor. And so very early on with our wild shapes, this is going to boost our AC so that we're not as squishy, because, when you wild shape as a druid, you very often going to get targeted because your AC is so low. So this is a nice little buff. Honestly, it's worth it, especially for the proficiency in Constitution saving throws. But yeah, let's move on. Level 2, we are going to multi-class into Druid. We're going to get Guidance and Thorn Whip, get access to some nifty spells. Level 3, we're going to get Circle of the Moon, which is where the build's going to pretty much come online because we will immediately get Combat Wild Shape. We can use our bonus action to transform into a bear who's going to have a nice chunk of health, deal decent damage, and again, we have proficiency in Constitution saving throws. While we are wild shaped, we can maintain concentration on value spells. So at level 2, at first level spells, we can have Entangle, we can have Fairy Fire, we can drop those spells, and then we can Wild Shape, and we're still going to be able to restrain enemies or have advantage on attacks on enemies, which is really freaking powerful. At level 4, which is level 3 of Druid, we get access to second level spells. We can cast Hold Person now, or cast Spike Growth, and these are going to be really powerful battlefield control spells. Don't forget about Moonbeam. Moonbeam is fantastic spell for damage output. Level 5 is where we get our first feat, because we're level 4 Druid. We're going to be taking Tavern Brawler, increasing our Constitution by 1 new Wild Shapes, which, to be honest, we're not really going to use. We're just going to stick with the Bear. And this is where the build gets crazy. Now, something that I don't think very many people know about, unless you played a Tavern Brawler Druid in Honor mode, is that Tavern Brawler scales your damage not just with unarmed attacks while you're wild shaped. It also scales it with spells. It only works for certain spells and is very particular and kind of random, to be honest. I don't know if this was a bug that they just didn't fix as of the final patch, but I mean, hey, it's post final patch 8. Like, this still works. You can drop a Spike Growth, Wild Shape, and if you have Tavern Brawler and you have a high strength because your Wild Shape has a lot of strength, then you're going to be dealing bonus damage from your Tavern Brawler on your Spike Growth. That by itself is absolutely crazy, especially if you can draw enemies in. And in Act 1, a lot of enemies are too dumb or they're pure melee, so they have to walk through your Spike Growth. They are going to eat a shit ton of damage, almost double damage from you being able to add on your strength modifier from Tavern Brawler onto Spike Growth. And this applies to a variety of different spells and effects as well. If you use something like a Wall of Fire, if you inflict the burning condition, the Tavern Brawler is going to get added on to the ticks of burning damage, which is really nice. Of course, this also helps boost the damage of any of your wild shapes that are going to be making unarmed attacks. So just in general, it is a very big boost to damage. But I'm shocked that it actually boosts damages to some of your spells in honor mode difficulty. I'm just absolutely blown away by that. So that's going to really shape the way how we play this build. We are trying to drop importance concentration spells, then wild shape, and then make as much use of those concentration spells as we can while we're swatting enemies in our wild shape form. Now, level 6 is when we get access to our wild strike. So we get to make an additional attack. We basically extra attack in wild shape. Very nice. We also get 3rd level spells. They aren't going to be super high value, but we do get Call Lightning, which is nice, and Sleet Swarm to break concentration. And if we have freedom of movement on ourselves later on, Plant Growth is really powerful. Level 7, we get Primal Strike, which honestly seems kind of bugged. Sometimes I feel like it doesn't actually work, this ability, but we don't care about that. We care about our wild shape Owlbear. We finally get a super powerful wild shape. When we can turn into the Owlbear, we can enrage ourselves to give us resistance to physical damage. We can also jump and do our Owlbear leap, which I've already talked about before in the tier list videos, but that shit's broken. It's just downright broken. You can, and based upon how high up you're jumping, you can flatten enemies and just outright one-shot enemies and bosses and stuff like that. So it's pretty crazy. Level 8, which is level 7 in Druid, we get access to 4th level spells, of which Freedom of Movement is absolutely goated for immunity to paralysis and restraint. We get Grasping Vine. We get Wall of Fire, which is a very powerful AoE damage spell for our Druid. And we get Confusion, which is a really, really powerful AoE disruption and CC spell to have against our enemies. At level 9, we will get access to another feat. I have over here, you can see Sentinel, which as of level 9 is not going to be useful for you. So I do recommend, making it Warcaster or making it something like an ability score improvement, just bumping your wisdom. But we're going to come back to this because once we hit level 10 in Druid, we get access to our Myrmidon shapes, and we can actually make use of the Sentinel feat, which is that special feat I was talking about to absolutely obliterate and lock down opponents. So we are going to be taking Sentinel eventually for this. If you're respecing, it's much easier to just take the Sentinel. But I do recommend taking something like an ability score improvement or a Warcaster until then. Now, level 10 is where we get access to 5th level spells. We are going to have Conjure Elemental as our main one, maybe Mass Cure Wounds, maybe Greater Restorations you might use sometimes, but Conjure Elemental, we get to fight with another Elemental who's going to have a nice chunk of health and deal some decent amounts of damage. They can be very, very useful, especially just to draw aggro and tank for you. Level 11 is where we get our 10th level of Druid, and this is absolutely huge because we get improved Wild Strike, so we can make 3 attacks whenever we're Wild Shaped, and we also get access to our Myrmidon forms. Each one, 2 Wild Shape charges instead of 1, but they're very powerful. They deal high damage, they usually have cool abilities, and good resistances or straight up immunities as well. These are absolutely goated, and this is where our character becomes a very consistent damage dealer. Now, as I said earlier, make sure that you have the Sentinel feat by the time you get here, because that is going to guys with the fire, water, and air Myrmidon forms, which do use weapons. Our Earth Myrmidon form, unfortunately, does not use weapons, but they get to deal insane damage, to be honest. But having Sentinel in your Myrmidon shape means that you can smack people who are trying to escape your powerful AoE spells, such as Wall of Fire. And for example, you could become a fire elemental, sit in your Wall of Fire because you're immune to the fire damage, and then when enemies try to move out, you smack them, and Sentinel makes it so they cannot move, so they're stuck in your Wall of Fire, and they're just going to have to roast and fight you to the bitter end, unfortunately, because of how powerful Sentinel is. You only get 1 reaction per turn, so there is a limitation on that, but I think this is a very interesting combo that I haven't seen anyone talk about. So Sentinel on Druid, pretty freaking clutch. Level 12, we get access to 6 level spell slots, and of course we're going to be using Hero's Feast to give us advantage on wisdom saves and a big boost to HP, and also immunity to poison, which is really strong too. If we get an item later on that gives us access to Cloud Kill, we can just sit in it. We're fully immune to the poison damage, and then we can just smack enemies, and with Sentinel, keep them inside the Cloud Kills. So this is our level progression, pretty straightforward. Let's go over the spells, of which, again, I kind of pointed out Wall of Fire, super goated, Conjure Elemental, Hero's Feast, Hold Person, Spike Growth. These are going to be some of the key spells you want to keep an eye out for. But having our Cantrip of Thorn Whip actually is still really good. We could pull enemies into a Spike Growth or into a Wall of Fire. So that's very nice to have. And our wild shapes, our priority is going to be the bear form, then the owlbear form, and then the Myrmidons. Now, for our itemization, on this build, we have a few different options, but I think this is going to be the best setup. We are going to be using the Shapeshifter hat to give us an additional wild shape charge. This is going to reset on a long rest, so once you use it up, you can honestly just swap it out with a different hat. But having an extra wild shape charge is really nice to have, especially because the Myrmidon is going to take up 2 wild shape charges. So you can basically only do that once per rest normally, but with the Shapeshifter hat, you'll still have a backup wild shape if you go down and drop your form in combat. Cloak of the Weave is going to be our spell save DC and spell attack rows. Very nice to have. I don't think a lot of people know this, but Formless Slaughter, which procs when you're shapeshifting or disguise, is of course going to apply when we are wild shape, and it's going to give us a boost to our attack rolls and our damage. And this actually stacks multiple times when you're making attacks in your Myrmidon form. So it actually gives you a little bit more than just +1 damage. And the +1 bonus to hit, again, increasing our accuracy is very helpful while wild shaped, because we often have to rely on just the base stats of our wild shape form. So this is great. Of course, alternatively, you can use the Armor of Moonbasking, which is going to give us extra THP when we wild shape. It's going to mitigate damage by 1. It's going to give us a +2 to AC and advantage on saving throws while wild shaped. This is really, really powerful. Although, because we have Armor Vagathis, we're going to be using this a lot more often than not. And so we're going to have a good amount of THP anyways, so we don't get as much value out of this our armor item. But if you don't want to use your spell slots in Armor Vagathis, then by all means go for the Armor of Moonbasking. Our gloves are going to be the Martial Exertion gloves. And the reason why we run these is because you can pop this at the start of combat. You're going to deal a large chunk of damage to yourself, but you basically get the haste effect for the current turn you're on. And this is really nice because you can make it so that you can cast a spell, or you can use your Martial Exertion first, then you cast a concentration spell, then you Wild Shape, and then you still have an attack to make from this ability. So pretty nice to have. Our boots are going to be Boots of Striding. This is going to make us, while we're concentrating on a spell, immune to the prone condition and being moved against our will. That's super huge because being knocked prone is the main way you break concentration. So very important to have this item. It's actually really big, and it also gives us extra movement, which is nice for momentum. For our necklace, we're going to be using Amulet of Wild. This is just a +2 bonus to our spell save DC. You can swap this out with whatever else is your preference, but +2 to spell save DC is pretty hard to beat. We have our Ring of Mental Inhibition to make it so that enemies that fail saving throws against us are going to be debuffed, and they're going to have a harder time passing the saves, which is very, very useful to have, especially with a Wall of Fire. So our second ring slot is going to be flex. It can really be whatever you want. If you want a Coruscation ring for a little bit of debuffing, if you want a Poisoner's ring, because you're going to be using Cloud Kill from the Marco Heshkir staff, that's also pretty powerful. You can also have something like the Shapeshifter's ring. That's going to give us a +1d4 to checks while we're wild shaped. Also pretty nice to have. And again, as I just said, our staff is the Marco Heshkir, which is going to give us a bonus to spell save DC and spell attack rolls. We're also going to get Arcane Battery so that we can cast a spell without consuming a spell slot, and we get Koreshka's Favor, of which each one is going to give us different types of spells that we can cast once per day for free. All of these are fantastic, but Cloud Kill specifically is really great because Druids don't have access to this normally, and we can get immunity to poison from either our Earth Myrmidon shape or from the Hero's Feast. Sizzling Cataclysm, we can get Hunger for Dara, which is pretty nice. Flame of Wrath, we get our Wall of Fire. Frost of Dark Winter, we're going to get Cone of Code and Ice Storm. Bolts of Doom, we're going to get Chain Lightning and Lightning Bolt. All of these are really useful and very powerful, but I do recommend Flames of Wrath or the Deadlier Than Arsenic effects for having an extra use of a concentration spell, a high value, high damage concentration spell. Our shield is going to be the Sentinel Shield, which gives us a +3 to initiative checks and advantage on perception checks, which is very nice to have outside of combat. And we're taking the Hellrider Longbow for another +3 bonus to our initiative rows. So from these two items, we have a +6 to initiative with our dex of +2. So we have a +8 to initiative. So more often than not, we're actually going to be going before our enemies. And that's really important because we want to drop down our high damage or high value concentration spell before we wild shape and before the enemies are able to spread out or get away from us. So that's pretty much going to be it for the itemization of the build. I'm obviously going to be showing a lot of footage of me using this build. It is very, very strong throughout all acts of the game because of how good Moon Druid is, and it's really not that dependent on items. Of course, these items are going to help you out a lot, but if you don't have them, you're still very, very powerful with just Tavern Brawler, an Elixir of Cloud Giant Strength, and your Wild Shape into a Myrmidon form. But with the addition of using the Sentinel, now we have a good control option so that we can lock down our foes inside of spells like Cloud Kill or spells like Wall of Fire and just deal a ton of damage over the course of a fight that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to do because they would have just ran away from us. So hope you guys like this build. It's not anything too crazy, I know, but I do think it's something interesting and definitely something different that a lot of people haven't tried before. So give that a shot if you're interested. All right, so next up is going to be our Drunken Barbarian build. This is a mixture of the Wildheart Barbarian with Drunken Monk, and it's going to be very powerful because we're going with the Tiger Wildheart, which gives us access to Tiger's Bloodlust. This is a unique attack that allows us to hit in a cone, basically similar to the regular cleaving attack, but we can only do this while we're raging, and it is going to inflict the bleed debuff when we hit our targets. So having that AoE attack is really strong because we're going to combo it with the Punch Drunk Bastard, which gives us Tippler's Rage. So whenever we're drunk, we have advantage on attack rolls, and our attacks are going to make a blast, an AoE blast of 1d4 thunder damage, which doesn't sound like a lot, but every single enemy you hit from Tiger's Bloodlust is going to proc this. So enemies are going to bounce the thunder damage off one another. They're going to be taking 3d4 thunder damage if you hit 3 enemies rather than just 1d4. And that starts to add up very quickly. We combo this, of course, with Gloves of Belligerent Skies and Boots of Stormy Clamor so that we can get procs of Reverberation that are going to cause our foes to take even more thunder damage. That's going to cause them to fall prone on their asses. And then once we get level 6 in Tiger Heart, which is what I'm going to explain later on, we're going to get the aspect of the Wolverine, which is going to make it so that our foes are basically going to be maimed and prone and literally will fully skip their turns. It is insane, this build. We do a lot of damage, AoE damage, and also we have good crowd control from the capability to knock enemies prone and then maim them, which skips their turn entirely. Drunken Monk is going to give us some much needed disengage, repositioning, and extra mobility, while also giving us a fat stack of damage because it synergizes so well with Tavern Brawler, which is going to be a feature that we run on this build. Alright, so let's talk about the level progression for this build. We're going to be playing a half orc with the soldier background. And if we look at our abilities, it's going to be like so. Make sure to max out on your strength and your con. We're going to take a +2 to strength because we are going to get the Tavern Brawler feat, which is going to give us a +1 to strength, and then that'll cap out at 18. Well, not cap out, but it'll get us up to 18. For our class, we're going to start off first level in Barbarian. That's going to give us proficiency in athletics and perception, unarmored defense, and of course rage, which is the key feature for Barbarian. Whenever we're raging, we have resistance to all physical damage, and we also deal extra damage on melee based strength attacks. Second level, we're going to go Barbarian again, danger sense, and we get reckless attack, which gives us advantage on attack rolls, but it makes it so that enemies have advantage on attack rolls against us. This is super good. Really useful to have, especially if you're able to just kill the enemy. It doesn't matter if they have advantage on you if they're dead. Level 3, we continue with Barbarian, and this is where we get our subclass. So if we go Wildheart Barbarian, you get the option to choose a Bestial Heart. A lot of people, they're going to go Bear for resistance to all damage types except Psychic. That is fantastic. Honestly, all of the Wildheart options are really good in their own right and very valuable for different types of builds. But we're going to be going specifically with the Tiger Heart for the Tiger's Bloodlust ability, which, as I said, is going to allow us to deal AoE damage in melee, hitting up to 3 enemies every single time we make an attack, which is super powerful. Level 4, we get our first feat. We are taking the Tavern Brawler. Now, we're not playing a Berserker, we're not playing a Giant Barb, so you can be using the Pike, the returning Pike, as an early game weapon alongside Tavern Brawler. You're going to deal tons of damage with this. You're not going to get super good value out of Tiger's Bloodlust at the moment if you do that, or you could choose to play melee and then use something like a Great Axe and then abuse Tiger's Bloodlust on enemies that are grouped up. But either way, it's still pretty nice to have the options of both AoE and then also throwing options, throwing weapons. Level 5, we get extra attack and fast movement. We continue down the line of Barbarian for one more level at level 6, at which point we get our second aspect of the beast. And this time we have a ton of different options, small options for different types of buffs. Aspect of the beast Wolverine is going to make it so that when we make our enemies bleed, we also maim them for 1 turn. And as I said earlier, the Tiger's Bloodlust is going to deal AoE damage and it will bleed enemies that we hit. So we have a very high chance that when we hit enemies, we are going to make them bleed and we're going to maim them, and maiming basically means that the creature cannot move until they are healed. So this is super powerful. Having this option early on means that we can control our enemies, we can prevent them from running away from us or repositioning in the fight to chase down our squishier allies. This is super powerful. So at level 7, we can finally multi-class into Monk, and that first level of Monk It doesn't give us a whole lot because unarmed strike, we have to use monk weapons to really make use of it. But we do get access to flurry of blows, and our tavern brawler from before is going to make it so that whenever we do flurry of blows, we're making 2 punches, and we're adding on our strength modifier twice to the damage of these punches. So they actually do pretty solid damage. We have good use for our bonus action for a little bit of extra damage now that we get back. We don't have a whole lot of key points, of course, but we do have access to this ability, which is nice. And at level 8, which is our second level of monk, we get unarmored movement. So if we're not wearing any sort of armor or using a shield, then we will get a boost to our speed. We get patient defense and step of the wind for that extra mobility on the battlefield, which again, actually can be very useful for our barbarian, who's going to be a little bit more of a skirmisher. Because we have the ability to maim enemies, we want to get to the back line as soon as possible and lock them down so they can't get away from us, and they have disadvantage because they're threatened by our presence. At level 9, we are going to get our 3rd level of monk, and this is where the build finally gets its drunken identity. By this point in Act 2, you should have the Punch Drunk Bastard, so it should synergize perfectly well. And when we get Way of the Drunken Master, this is going to give us access to Drunken Technique. So that flurry of blows that we were using before, now it is doubly buffed, where we get extra movement speed and we automatically disengage from enemies whenever we use it. This is really, really good because as Barbarian, you are going to be in the front lines, often engaged with other melee enemies, and you're going to have to take a hell of a lot of opportunity attacks to reposition to an area where you might be able to hit 3 enemies instead of 2, or where you might be able to hit the back line instead of the front line. And so being able to freely disengage while attacking from your Drunken Technique is actually surprisingly very useful for our Barbarian. We also get Deflect Missiles, which is a nice little bit of extra damage mitigation against ranged enemies. Cheeky Tipple makes us immune to the negative effects of being drunk, which, to be honest, not that big a deal, but we do get half our key points back, so that's pretty nice. We get proficiency and performance as well. All of these things are fantastic. Level 4 is where we are going to get our feat, because we're continuing with monk. We're going to be taking Great Weapon Master. This is going to give us the ability to use all in with the Punch Drunk Bastard, where we take a -5 penalty to our attack rolls, but we get +10 damage. And because Punch Drunk Bastard makes it so that when we're drunk, we're attacking with advantage, we are swinging in with Great Weapon Master as often as we can. As long as your hit rate is over like 55%, I would say it's worth it to go for Great Weapon Master to get these huge bursts of damage. But of course, if you really need to debuff enemies to knock them prone and to maim them, then maybe don't use all in on heavily armored enemies. But either way, it is a very big boost to damage. We do get that extra bonus action attack if we kill or crit on an enemy with our Punch Drunk Bastard, so that's also nice. And we get Intoxicating Strike as well. This is honestly not going to be very useful for our character. If you punch them, they're going to get drunk, and they're going to have a debuff to their attack, and you're going to have a boost of your AC against them. It is very nice, but honestly not worth the key points. Save it for your other abilities. Level 11, we go back into Barbarian and we get Feral Instinct, which gives us a +3 bonus to initiative, and we cannot be surprised. This is actually very useful. It's basically a mini version of the alert feat. Super great to have so that we can go first and really prioritize locking down opponents who might run away from us. And then at level 12, we cap out the build, we get another feat. This one is honestly flexible, so you can pick whatever you want. You can take Tough if you want more HP, you can get an ability score improvement if you want to max out your strength or increase your con. You can take Tough, you can take Resilient, you can take a number of different feats, but what I'm going to recommend actually is Sentinel, because yet again, this is a great feature to have on Barbarians. I think people are more aware of Sentinel being good on Barbarians than Druid, but regardless, Sentinel is a really great feature to have because, again, we have the capability to maim our enemies, but this makes it so that if they somehow didn't get maimed and try to run away from us, we're still going to lock them down and make sure that they cannot escape from the battlefield. Sentinel, absolutely fantastic. We also get the advantage that if an ally gets hit and we're in melee range of them, then we can make an opportunity attack. Well, not really an opportunity attack, but we can make a revengeful attack back as well. So we can weaponize our reaction, which Barbarians typically don't have access to. All right, so let's talk about the equipment for the Drunken Barbarian. We touched briefly on a few of these pieces of equipment, but I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. Our main item is the Punk Drunk Bastard. This is what makes the Tigerheart Barbarian build work so damn well, because we can stack thunder damage from multiple instances of hitting enemies Whenever we are drunk, we get Tippler's Rage, which makes it so that we have advantage on attack rolls, and we do that AoE thunder damage. You can get this item pretty early into Act 2 by going to the Waning Mood, where Thistlebolt Thorn is, and it's hidden underneath a board. You can check the wiki to see the exact location for that. You'll notice we have a plus 1d4 bonus fire damage that is from the Drake Throat Glaive. Using the Draconic Elemental Weapon, we give it a little bit of extra fire damage, and the reason for that is that if you really want to make things over the top, we can use Oil of Combustion to start proccing AoE fire damage on top of the thunder. This goes absolutely crazy, and we actually do a lot of damage to ourselves using it, but it's very fun. You can try that out. Our ranged weapon is going to be the Dead Shot, which is just going to give us increased crit chance, so that's pretty nice. Our main pieces of equipment, our gear, our helmet's going to be the Helmet of Arcane Acuity, and that seems kind of odd to have the Helmet of Arcane Acuity on a barbarian who doesn't have spellcasting. But here's the crazy thing. You gain Arcane Acuity, which is going to increase our spell save DC by +1 for each stack of this. And the crazy part is that this actually applies to the Reverberation difficulty class that enemies have to pass to be knocked prone, to be dazed, to be affected by this debuff. And it is going to make it so that we guarantee we are able to knock our enemies prone, and that they're going to get maimed, and they're going to basically have to skip their turn entirely from this debuff. So it's actually very important, this piece of gear for this character. If you have someone else in the party who needs a Helmet of Arcane Acuity, of course, you can give it to them, but it's actually really good on our Drunken Monk Barbarian build. We have Cloak of Protection for just some extra stats. We have our Flame Enameled Armor for an increase to initiative, as well as a really nice resistance to fire damage and +2 bonus to all of our saving throws. I think this is actually a really strong piece of medium armor that's great for any character. Particularly great for the Barbarian because boosting our saves is very huge. And our gloves, of course, are going to be the Gloves of Belligerent Skies. Our boots, the Boots of Stormy Clamor. This just makes it so that whenever we're dealing thunder damage, we're inflicting Reverberation. And whenever we inflict Reverberation, or any other condition for that matter, we inflict more stacks of this debuff. So very powerful. With these two items together, you can proc Reverberation, get all 5 stacks in a single hit or 2 hits in one turn. Our amulet is going to be the Amulet of the Drunkard. This you get in Act 3. Unfortunately, it's not available until Act 3, so before that you can use whatever amulet you want. But Amulet of the Drunkard, really, really big. This item got buffed, so basically when you drink and you get drunk, the debuff or the buff, for our character at least, it only lasts for a very short amount of time, but by having the Amulet of the Drunkard, you extend that to a total of 10 rounds. It used to only be like 2 rounds before, then Amulet of the Drunkard would extend it by a few more rounds. So you could run out of the drunk debuff in combat, but with the Amulet of the Drunkard, that's never going to happen, and every single turn while you're drunk, you're going to get 1d8 or 2d4 healing, which is quite nice. We're going to have the Ring of Spiteful Thunder, which is going to make it so that when we make enemies reverberate, they will also become dazed to further debuff them. And we have the Caustic Band to give a +2 acid damage on all of our attacks. So this is going to go very well together. Again, the build is focused on slamming down on our enemies with Tiger's Bloodlust, doing tons of AoE damage, hopefully knocking our enemies prone and maiming them so that they have to essentially skip their turn because they cannot move and they are prone, so they are just stuck in the prone condition, which in Baldur's Gate 3 makes you absolutely useless if you can't stand back up. You can't do anything while you are prone. So very powerful, and with Drunken Technique we have 5 key points. We can slam down with lots of damage from our bonus action, or use it to reposition our character. Very, very nifty. We also have the dash, the disengage, patient defense. We have extra options that are going to give us, again, more mobility on the battlefield as a skirmisher barbarian, which the barbarian normally isn't so much of a skirmisher. We're going to be really caring about where we position ourselves on the battlefield because we have this AoE ability that we want to make maximum use of. So I think this goes together very nicely, and of course we're going to be having lots of gameplay to show you how goddamn awesome it is. So that's going to be pretty much it for the video. I'm going to leave you with some gameplay footage, maybe some commentary on some runs that we've been doing with these characters. It's been a lot of fun. This is all of these builds that I'm showcasing, they are on honor mode difficulty. So I promise you that these builds are very powerful, very strong. Even leveling up, you know, Moon Druid, of course, is going to be godly. Thief Rogue alongside Swords Bard is going to be godly. Just a regular Barbarian in general is going to be godly. So level progression is going to be totally fine for you guys. You can, of course, always respec if you feel like the dip in Draconic Sorcerer or maybe the multi-classing is a little bit too much for you. But I promise you, it is fully viable in honor mode difficulty. So again, check all that stuff out. Let's move on over to the gameplay. All right, so we're here in the House of Grief, basically the Shar lair, where we have the big fight against Viconia. And for those of you who haven't played this on honor mode, it can be a little bit of a challenge just due to the sheer amount of Sharrans that you have to fight in this lair. But I skipped a little bit ahead. We basically aggroed the whole group, and then we retreated back down the main corridor to lure them all into pretty much a straight line path. And the reason why is because we're going to be using our warrior druid and showcasing it at its best, lining up enemies for a massive AoE spell, Wall of Fire, that we are then going to concentrate on as we then wild shape into our fire elemental form and then smack the living hell out of our foes while standing in a wall of fire like an absolute badass. So gonna open up with a little bit of a dark hole there, a little bit of the illithid power to group them up and take away the reactions and slow them. That's gonna make it really hard for them to get out of the wall of fire, especially if they're aggroed on to my druid. We're also gonna transform into a fire myrmidon and walk inside. We're actually gonna tank an AOP here, just so that we proc our Armor Vagathis, and that guy takes an extra 25 damage. Ouchie wouchie for him. And then we bring in our other elemental, our Fire Myrmidon, from the Summon Elemental spell into the fray to spread Burning Cinders all over the rest of them who are already in the Wall of Fire. And with this, we're able to stack on tons of AoE damage. Very effective, especially in this tight space that we've lured all our enemies in. My druid did drink a potion of haste, that's why he had 2 actions to be able to do the Black Hoe, and then also cast Wall of Fire. But again, you really don't have to abuse potions of haste too much with these builds because they are a very strong baseline. But just for this little showcase here, I wanted to really gather the enemies together. And debuffing them in the Wall of Fire, ooh, absolutely brutal. Look how little distance that guy covered. They're dashing and they're only traveling, you know, maybe 7 or 8 meters into the Wall of Fire. So pretty much all of those enemies, they're going to be taking the damage. These guys who have not started in the Wall of Fire are trying to go around it. But unfortunately, the ones who are already inside are just going to be burning up. Something to note, if you do raid this Sharran den, is that all of the spellcasters, they're going to spam darkness. It's pretty annoying. You do want to have something to either ignore blindness or be able to reposition yourself so that you can get around that. But you can see already, these guys are dropping like flies. All the novices, they don't have the health to sustain our damage from this Wall of Fire. And one thing to note, the Tavern Brawler, it's not actually boosting our damage for this spell, unfortunately. But if they do get lit on fire and they are burning, then those burn ticks will get the benefits of our Tavern Brawler. So that is something to note. In the case of Wall of Fire, Sentinel is actually going to be higher value for us if we turn into a Fire Myrmidon and sit in our Wall of Fire. Because, again, we can use our Sentinel to lock enemies down, to force them to stay within the Wall of Fire. They cannot disengage from us. They cannot run away unless they teleport. So yeah, it's back to our turn. We can finally start wailing on the people inside of here. I tanked an A up on accident there. Did not mean to do that, but, you know, that's all right. We're going to hit the hell out of all of our enemies over here. And Viconia does have a pretty annoying legendary action where she can basically dominate your characters. She can give sanctuary to our allies. It does stall the fight quite a bit, but that's totally alright. We've already thinned out quite a few of the Sharrans. Now we're going to go over to our Gunslinger and try to find a priority target. We're actually going to get into position here by Misty Stepping. Boom. And we're going to take out this Sharran. Oh, actually, I think I go for the hook shot here. Actually, no. Because these enemies are grouped up with the wall of fire, a bomb arrow can be particularly useful for knocking them into the wall of fire, as you're going to see here, dealing a nice extra chunk of damage if they are knocked inside. Very, very powerful. Something that just makes the dual hand crossbow build or the Gunslinger build super powerful is the fact that we have all these specialty arrows, and they honestly can fill the niche for you when your spells aren't going to be able to. But like the build is so adaptable and versatile in terms of, you know, we can use our Bands of Mystic Scoundrels so we can cast a person or Hypnotic Pattern to CC enemies, but we could also use Charming Arrows, we can use Silence Arrows, we can debuff enemies with just our specialty consumable arrows alone as well. And now we're going to be showcasing the Drunken Barbarian. We're going to wail onto Baconia, and I think I do knock her prone here. Let's see. Oh yeah, she's fallen down, she is prone, and she is maimed, so she's useless. She's basically going to have to skip her turn. But you know what? Maybe we're also going to punch the crap out of her. No, I think I take a defense here. Yeah. And we'll just tank the fire damage because we have fire resistance. And dodging actually pays off because he misses all their attacks. That guy is going to burn up to a crisp. These guys all use Bone Chill, which can be very annoying. If you get low on health, Bone Chill means you are not going to be able to heal back up. But fortunately, everyone here is still pretty healthy. And yeah, this fight is going to be a breeze at this point. There's hardly any Sharrans left. You know, the ones that are left, we are just going to decimate into nothingness. Let's see here. Blast this poor lady. And then now we can do a nice little AoE attack here. Boom, and she's dead. Make 2 Sharrans left, and we finish it. Fortunately, our main Fire Myrmidon Druid is lethargic from the potion of speed wearing off, so we're just going to have our summon go in our steed. Ooh, do we finish it off with this? Not quite, but we still have a bonus action, and just like that. Super easy fight on honor mode difficulty. This is with a 3-person party, and we didn't even have 4 people, so I mean, if that's not a good showcase of what these builds can do, I don't know what is. Oh, wait a minute, we do have more footage for you, and that's going to be the Gortash fight. So we are here for the Gortash fight. This is, again, on honor mode difficulty. And this is inside of the Wormrock Castle. So we're fighting him at the top. I did not kill the Steelwatch Titan, so we do have to deal with the Steelwatcher here, which is kind of a nuisance, but honestly not that bad. I actually killed all the other Steelwatchers outside of the area here. And also, I did a little bit of prep in advance just in terms of destroying all of the mechanisms and turrets in this area of the room. Obviously, the ones over here I didn't touch. We're going to lure Gortash to come over to us because we don't want to deal with these fucking stupid incineration casters and all the other garbage. Now, I think I'm going to drop a confusion spell here. We have a pretty good chance to impact and confuse the Steelwatcher here. Boom. Perfect. Then we're going to make our way over here. And, am I going to wild shape already? I'm debating whether or not I wild shape. I don't think we wild shape just yet. I think we might actually want to pop potion speed. Or I might want to give that to Sally. Let her pop off. I think we're gonna let Sally pop off today. So we're gonna give her the potion to speed. We are just gonna take a chill here. We're gonna turn into an air Myrmidon because fortunately Gortash in his secondary form, he is immune to fire and thunder damage. So those two forms are out.
This city is mine.
And look at that. He's baiting himself, just dashing on up to us. Unfortunately, he does have Reflecto Guard up, which means I can't shoot him because I'm just going to kill myself. That would be really bad. So what we are going to do, Hexblades curse him and hex him. Hex his dex, not that it really matters. Then we're going to get a position here. And, I do have a full action. I don't really want to waste it. Maybe we do go for some shots onto this guy. Ah, that's a little risky. I say we just stay back here where it's nice and safe. Have this guy walk up and be our meat shield. Get their turn because it was confused. Absolutely perfect. And now we're gonna send in our Drunken Barbarian Morga. And hopefully we can knock it prone. Ooh, not quite. Oh, he is maimed though, so he can't move. That's pretty good. Pretty damn good. We couldn't knock him prone. He's got one more stack of reverberation that we gotta proc on him. Oh, that's hell of annoying. Ooh, that is also very annoying as well.
What path lies before me?
Alright, let's... I'm gonna get hit by Sentinel. My own character is gonna Sentinel me. Oh, man, that hurt. But at the very least, broke concentration. Nice, we stunned him. Stunned this idiot. Still has its aura though, which is bullshit, but whatever.
You chose to suffer. You chose to die.
Not transform? Oh, there we go. It lagged for a sec, so I genuinely thought he did transform. I don't want to enter the aura of terror, but I do want to have the aura of murder on him. So unfortunately, we got to go in. Oh no, we still have advantage. Okay, perfect. We're gonna murder Gortash. I think we should be able to kill him in one turn. I'm not certain, but I'm pretty sure we can kill him this turn. So we're gonna blast him with an arrow of humanoids. Actually, no, we're just gonna blast him with 2 slashing torches. Get a proc sneak. We want to get a critical attack for the proc sneak. There we go. Boom. Look at that. Holy shit, he is so fucking low already. Boom, and one more shot will do it. Goodbye. That easy. It's that easy with this build. I mean, we are using Crater Flesh Gloves, which are specifically really disgusting, especially on a rogue. But we don't even have that much sneak attack damage, so we're not getting an insane amount of value. Let's look at the log. On our critical attack, we did... Oh, shit. 110 damage. That's a little wild. God damn. That was pretty nasty, not gonna lie. But yeah, absolutely very devastating build to have, especially with the ballast armor. Even without the ballast armor, we would have chunked him down to like a third of his HP or less, and we could finish him off with the rest of our characters. But yeah, that's a good showcase of what we can do. Now we do have the Steel Watcher to worry about. Ow. A little bit annoying. Let's see. These guys are a little bit too spread out for me to hit both of them. Everyone is spread out here, which is a problem. We're just gonna finish off this guy. Ooh, he lived just barely. I don't want to get the extra movement, so we're gonna double tap this dude. Then we're gonna make our way all the way over to this lady. Will we smack her in the face? Perfect. And now she's maimed and prone, which means that she will not take a turn. Ooh. That absolutely hurt my Myrmidon, but it hurt him a heck of a lot more. Yep, and her turn got skipped. Amazing. We did get blasted by a grenade, and that hurt a lot, but that's totally alright. See if we can stun one of them. Oh, there we go. Oh, both of them got stunned. Oh my goodness. I think we're gonna back up. And we will heal.
It's easy these days.
Now we can just finish these dudes off for free. Let's get some big damage out here. Whew, Jesus. Disgusting amounts of damage. Well, maybe we just confuse this gentleman.
Time to push my luck again.
Unfortunate. I hypnotized my elemental, but not the Steel Watcher. Oh, and then we got smashed in the head for 146 damage. Fortunately, that you can only remove with the move curve, so we just have to tank it there. I think we'll be fine. Ooh, I want to finish off this guy. Let's run the technique. Now we don't have to worry about AOPS, and we can obliterate this fellow. Dead. Perfect. And yeah, we'll stay in melee. Ooh, actually, Morga's in a little bit of trouble here if she gets hit by another one of those big blasts. I think we should pick up Sally,
At the ready.
Can't quite reach it yet. Can I heal my elemental? Oh, I can. Awesome.
Take you.
We do still have 2 bonus actions, which means
What do I have to lose?
we can take some pot shots.
Don't
Excellent.
waste a step.
Oh boy. There is a bomb underneath my feet. And I want nothing to do with that, so we're running on out of here. Oh! Very rude.
I need to find a way forward.
Still breathing, despite everything.
What now?
So we're just gonna end turn here, let that thing explode. And there you go. That is the Gortash fight. Plain and simple. We did, unfortunately, you know, we did go down just from Gortash's smashing ability. That one's a little bit annoying to deal with. But honestly, we're totally fine. Take a short rest. And almost good as new. So that's going to be it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed the showcases of these 3 builds. They really are a lot of fun, and I think they're pretty interesting and unique. Let me know in the comments if you already knew about these builds, or let me know in the comments if you didn't. And hey, if you have any crazy build ideas or recommendations, I will absolutely make a video on that. So again, please leave any sort, like, comment, subscribe. All of that helps the channel out. I do still love making Baldur's Gate 3 content, and I am going to be following up with, of course, the subclasses, all of the spellcaster subclasses. The tier list for that should be coming out probably next week. But yeah, I still have some ideas for some Baldur's Gate 3 videos. There's been a lot of Baldur's Gate 3 videos that have been made over the years, and so there's not that many unique builds left, but I still think I can find some pretty interesting things to share with you guys, so stay tuned for more. But that is going to be it for today. I will see you all in the next video. Have a very lovely day.